Shalom, this is your Ark. Yah is magnified, coming back with another informative video. I titled this video, The Change of Status Creates the Duty of Support. But before I tackle this subject, as always, I must state for the record, I'm not a lawyer, I do not practice law, and I do not pretend to. All my videos are for informational and educational purposes only. They're all facts and all truth. Nothing more, nothing less. So with that being said, let's get to it. Alright guys, I'd like to give a shout out to everyone that's been rocking out with me from the beginning. Okay, for those that's been with me from the beginning, you all know that I haven't changed my pitch from day one. Okay, whenever channels had changed up or switched up, I've been 100 and I kept it the same from the beginning. Okay, you can go back and watch all my videos for all the new subscribers that's subscribing to the channel. Go back and watch all my old videos. You all will see that everything I've been saying from back then, I'm saying now. Nothing changed. Okay, when I first came on here, I was telling you all the best way of seeking remedy is to separate yourself from the straw man. Some people call it the legal person. Some people call it the ens legis. Some people call it the transmit utility. It all depends on whatever you decide to call it. It doesn't matter. Okay? When there was channels on YouTube saying, don't listen to Yah's magnified, he don't know what he's talking about. You know? Until they started seeing these results coming back to back to back to back. Now they on their channels also saying, separate yourself from the straw man. You're not that person. Don't go to court as a parent. And you know, but a few months ago, these people wasn't saying that. These people was actually going against Yah's magnified, trying to prove Yah's magnified wrong, until Yah's magnified started dropping testimony after testimony, results after results. And still to this day, the only one is dropping testimony after testimony and results after results. It's just crazy. But let's continue on. You know, I digress. So let's continue on. So now, as you all can see, we're coming from where? The Texas Attorney General.gov, so we can get better understanding. Now, this is not just only for Texas. This for every state, especially if you are a father. Matter of fact, this video right here is only for fathers. Why? Because when dealing with establishment of paternity, only a father can establish paternity, not a mother. Why? Because the mother pushed out the child. And once she pushed out the child, she became the informant, informing the state that a new vessel was birthed at the dock. Okay? Or the doctor. You know, but let's finish. So now, as you all can see, we're coming from, again, Ken Paxton, Attorney General of Texas. But like I stated, this is not only for Texas, this is for every state. I'm just using Texas to get my point across, okay? Now, as you all can see, it states paternity. Let's read it. Paternity is legal fatherhood. Like I was telling you guys, that's all paternity is. Legal fatherhood, not legal motherhood. Then it states, and it is one of the most important steps in the child support process. That's not true. It is the most important step in the child support process. Not one of the most, it is the most. Okay? Let's continue reading. Establishing paternity will benefit the child, the father, and the entire family. Now, that's far from the truth. That's a complete lie. Establishing paternity will what? It will hurt the child, hurt the father, and hurt the entire family, which is true. Okay, but let's continue. Remember, for unmarried parents, the biological father does not have legal rights to his child until paternity is established. Okay, so that further lets you know, it doesn't matter if the child mom go down and apply for support or not. If paternity is not established, then the child does not have recourse to the father's income or the biological father's income until the biological father changes his status to what? The legal father, or till paternity has been established. There are 4 main ways that the agency or the state use to establish paternity. Number 1, the birth certificate. Number 2, you voluntarily acknowledging paternity out of your mouth. Number 3, the actions that establishes what? Parent-child relationship. Number 4, a DNA test. Those are the 4 main ways they use to establish paternity. Okay? So now, let's go to this term called acknowledgement of paternity so we can see what's going on. So let's go to the Black Law Dictionary to get better understanding of what's going on. Okay, let's pick this up at acknowledge. Acknowledge means to what? To own, avow, or admit. To confess, to recognize one's acts and assume the responsibility thereof. Okay? We know a responsibility is what? An obligation. But let's continue with acknowledgement. Because they want you to do what? Acknowledge paternity. But let's go to acknowledgement. Acknowledgement means to simply acknowledge is to admit, affirm, declare, testify, avow, confess, or own as genuine. Let's stroll up where it says pass the case law. Then it states admission or affirmation of obligations or responsibilities. So once you acknowledge paternity, then you're affirming what? The obligation and the responsibility to support the child. Okay, but let's go to paternity. So to acknowledge paternity means to what? An avowal or admission that the child is one's own. Recognition of a parental relationship either by a written agreement, verbal declaration, or statements by the life, acts, and conduct of the party, or any other satisfactory evidence that the relation was recognized and admitted. Same four things that I've been telling you guys. The only one they left out was what? DNA. Okay? So now, let's further go to the definition of paternity since we just did acknowledgement and acknowledgement of paternity. Let's go to paternity. Paternity. Up top of the screen. It states the state or condition of a father, the relationship of a father. Right? Then it says paternity, suit, or action. So if they bring in a paternity suit against you, it's for what? A court action to determine whether a person is the father of a child born out of wedlock for the purpose commonly of enforcing support obligations. So again, it's to support, it's to enforce the support obligation. Without a paternity being established, there is no support obligation. But let's go to obligations so we can find out what exactly an obligation is. Obligation. Top of the screen. It states a generic word derived from the Latin substantive obligatio, having many wide and varied meanings according to the context in which it is used, that which a person is bound to do or forbear any duty imposed by law. Okay? So it's what? Any duty imposed by law, promise, contract, relations of society, courtesy, kindness, with the case law to back it up. But again, the obligation is what? A law or duty binding parties to perform their agreement. Okay? So again, obligations is a duty. So basically what the state is doing now is claiming that you have a duty of support. Okay? If it's a duty of support, then there's no longer a debt. It's a duty. That's why they can arrest you for failure for non-payment of child support, because they changed your status. Once they change your status to a parent, then it's no longer a debt, but it now becomes a duty. But let's read the case law to further prove that. So let's go there. Okay, as you all can see, we're coming from Ex parte Hall, which is a Texas Supreme Court case that was done back in 1993. This case will single-handedly explain how they changed the debt into a duty, okay? Because if it's a debt, we know that debts are not punishable by contempt. So in order for them to change the status, to have you all be arrested for this so-called child support, they had to switch the status from, they had to switch your status. And once they changed your status, it's no longer a debt, but becomes a duty, what I was just showing you guys at the earlier part of the video. So let's get to the meat and potatoes. Okay, here we go. Coming from Texas case law itself, it states, as a general rule, a person who willfully disobeys a valid court order is guilty of contempt and subject to imprisonment for a prescribed period and until he complies with the order. Right? Case law and Texas codes to support that. But then it states, however, the failure to comply with an order to pay a debt is not contempt punishable by imprisonment because of the prohibitions of Article 1, Section 18 of the Texas Constitution, which states no person shall ever be imprisoned for a debt. So in order for them to get around that, guys, they had to do what? They had to change your status. But let's continue. Such an order may be enforced only by other legal processes such as executions or attachments of property, but not by imprisonment of the adjudicated debtor. The obligation which the law imposed on spouses to support one another and on parents to support their children is not considered a debt within Article 1, Section 18, but a legal duty arising out of the status of the parties. Did you all just read that? Let's go over it one more time. The obligation which the law imposes on spouses to support one another and on parents to support their children is not considered a debt within Article 1, Section 18, but a legal duty arising out of the status of the parties. So they had to change your status in order for it to become a legal duty. Okay, but let's continue reading. An order requiring temporary support payments is enforceable by contempt. Texas case law, Texas Family Code to back that up. Then it states, however, a person may also contract to support his spouse and children, and that obligation to the extent it exceeds his legal duty is a debt. The contract may be enforced by an order requiring payment of the support as agreed, but to the extent the obligation is a debt, it is enforceable only by ordinary processes of the law. So it clearly tells you all that you can enter into your private agreement with your child's mom, and that private agreement is not enforceable by contempt if you want to do that. Okay? But also, we know in my Ark last video that I put up with my Ark last testimony, him and his child's mom did what? Entered into their own private agreements on what? His terms and conditions. Okay? He received what he wanted, or in order for she to receive what she wanted, she had to give him what he wanted, and he was not negotiating that. That part was non-negotiable. Okay? So, now that you all see, they must change your status in order for them to have any type of legal recourse or to enforce any of this against you guys, okay? Other than that, it'll just be a regular debt. So they changed your status from the biological father to the legal father, which also became the parent. Once you became the parent, you became you have the obligation to support the child, which is a duty, or which is known as to be a lawful duty. Once it becomes a lawful duty, it's no longer considered a debt, and then they can what? Hold you in contempt for that. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do for today. If you all need my help, hit me up at my email at y'allismagnified@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe. With that being said, I say shalom.